They don't just call me Julian anymore, they call me Queen Goddess. Let that sink in for a moment. Queen Goddess. But here's the truth they don't tell you in the headlines, the magazine spreads, or the red carpet interviews. She wasn't born in a palace. She wasn't discovered on a runway in Milan or Paris. No, Queen Goddess was born in the most unlikely place you could imagine. A dusty university theater, barely big enough to hold 50 people, with creaking wooden floors and lights that flickered every time someone sneezed too hard. Life is good. Life is full. Life is mine. But it wasn't always like this. Some years ago, I was a completely different person. And if you had told that version of me, the quiet, disciplined, play-it-safe theater student, that one day he would be known as Queen Goddess, celebrated across stages and screens, meet the most incredible woman he'd ever known, I would have laughed nervously and changed the subject. So, buckle up, because this isn't just about a dress or a performance or even a name. This is about the moment I stopped pretending to be someone I wasn't and started becoming someone I never knew I could be. And now, I'm going to tell you that story, the real story, the one that changed my life forever. Before we dive in, please hit the subscribe button and join the Gender Diary family for heartfelt stories about discovery, transformation, and love. We're on our way to reaching our next big milestone, and every single subscriber helps us share even more powerful stories like this one. Let me take you back to where it all began. I was a second-year theater student at a university that most people had never heard of, and I liked it that way. Small, manageable, safe. I was the kind of student professors liked but never remembered. Talented enough to get good grades, disciplined enough to show up on time, quiet enough to never cause trouble. I kept my head down, did the work, followed the rules. I was raised that way. Keep things simple, neat, traditional. Don't make waves. Don't take unnecessary risks. I was a spark. A quiet, controlled, barely there spark. And then there was Eugenia. If I was a spark, she was a wildfire. The kind of person who walks into a room and every single head turns. Not because she's loud or demanding attention, though she could be both when she wanted, but because she just occupied space differently than the rest of us. Like she had permission to exist at full volume, and the rest of us were still asking for it. She was bold, commanding, fearless. She'd wear vintage blazers with combat boots and somehow make it look like high fashion. She'd challenge professors in class discussions, not disrespectfully, but with this confidence that said, I know my worth and I'm not shrinking for anyone. And me? I admired her from afar, always from afar. We'd been in the same classes before, passed each other in hallways, worked on separate scenes in the same rehearsal space. Fate kept throwing us into the same orbit, but we'd never really collided. Not yet. Until that project. It was October. The semester was in full swing, and our experimental theater class had just been given the assignment: create an original performance piece in groups of 4. Theme: Reimagining classic stories. I remember sitting in that classroom, hoping I'd get grouped with people who just wanted a decent grade and wouldn't cause any drama. I was already mentally preparing to play a safe, small role, maybe a narrator, maybe a background character. Something that wouldn't require too much visibility. And then the professor read the group assignments. Group 7, Julian, Eugenia, Emily, and Laura. My stomach dropped. Eugenia. Of course it was Eugenia. I looked across the room and she was already looking at me, one eyebrow raised, a small smirk playing at the corner of her lips. Like she knew something I didn't. Emily was sitting next to her, sharp-witted, sarcastic, the kind of person who could roast you and make you laugh at the same time. I'd seen her demolish people in improv exercises with nothing but a raised eyebrow and perfect timing. And Laura was on the other side, soft-spoken, gentle, observant. She never said much, but when she did, people listened. 3 women. One very nervous guy. This was going to be interesting. We met in the rehearsal room the next day. It smelled like old wood and stage makeup, and the afternoon light was filtering through the high windows and dusty beams. Eugenia didn't waste time. She never did. All right, she said, tossing her bag onto a chair and crossing her arms. I've been thinking about this. What if we do Cinderella? I remember blinking at her. Cinderella? Like The fairy tale? Exactly like the fairy tale, she said, eyes sparkling with something I couldn't quite name. But with a twist. Cinderella and the missing shoe. We reimagine it, make it ours. Emily leaned back against the piano. I'm listening. Laura nodded quietly, her eyes curious. But me? I was already shaking my head. Cinderella? I said, trying to sound reasonable. It's a children's story. This is supposed to be experimental theater. We're supposed to challenge conventions, push boundaries, make people think. Cinderella is just a fairy tale. Eugenia looked at me for a long moment. And then she smiled. Not a mocking smile. Something softer. Something knowing. Julian, she said, this isn't about fairy tales versus real life. This is about transformation. It's about becoming someone you never thought you could be. That's as real as it gets. I didn't have an answer for that. Besides, Emily chimed in with a grin, we're not doing it straight. We're doing it our way. Laura nodded. It could be beautiful. And just like that, I was outnumbered. The next question came fast. So who's playing Cinderella? Emily asked, looking around the group. There was a pause, a very long pause, and then Eugenia looked directly at me. Julian, she said simply. I laughed, actually laughed. What? No, no way. Why not? She asked, completely serious. Because I'm the only guy in this group and Cinderella is a woman? Eugenia finished for me. So that's not how it works. Says who? Emily jumped in, her eyes lighting up with mischief. This is experimental theater, Julian. We're supposed to challenge conventions, remember? Your words. I opened my mouth. Closed it again. Laura spoke quietly. You'd be perfect for it, actually. You have the grace, the presence. I don't have, I started, but Eugenia cut me off. You do. You just don't let yourself use it. That hit me harder than I wanted to admit. Come on, Emily said, leaning forward. You'll make a gorgeous princess. Trust me. I'm not trying to be. Then what are you trying to be? Eugenia asked. And the question hung in the air like smoke. I didn't have an answer. Not then. Just try it, Laura said gently. If it doesn't feel right, we'll figure something else out. And for reasons I still don't fully understand, I said yes. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the challenge in Eugenia's eyes. Maybe it was something deeper, something I'd been ignoring for a very long time. Whatever it was, I agreed. And that decision changed everything. Rehearsals started the following week. And that's when things got real. We were in the costume room, this cluttered, magical space in the basement of the theater building, racks and racks of clothes from decades of productions. Everything smelled like mothballs and old perfume and possibility. Laura was rifling through the evening wear section when she suddenly stopped. Found it, she whispered. She pulled out a gown, and I swear, even in that dim lighting, it seemed to glow. Pale blue. Layers of satin that caught every shift of light. Puffed sleeves. A fitted bodice that looked like it had been tailored by someone who actually cared about craftsmanship. And a skirt. God, that skirt. Flowing into waves like something out of an actual fairy tale. That's Cinderella? I asked, my voice smaller than I intended. Eugenia smirked. Exactly. Now wear it. I hesitated. My hands were shaking as I reached for the hanger. Emily and Laura turned away to give me privacy, but Eugenia stayed. Arms crossed, watching. Need help? She asked. I think I can manage. Spoiler, I could not manage. Those buttons, those layers, that corset-style back, it took all four of us to get me into that dress properly. But when we finally did, I turned to face the mirror, and I didn't recognize myself. The fabric didn't feel heavy like I'd expected. It felt light, freeing. The bodice hugged my frame, giving structure and shape, making me stand taller. The skirt fanned out with every movement, rustling softly, catching the light like water. I looked elegant, not like a man in a dress, like someone who belonged in that dress. Makeup next, Emily announced, already pulling out a kit. 20 minutes later, I was staring at my reflection again. Lashes fluttering longer than I'd ever seen on my own face. Lips painted a deep, rich red. Cheekbones sharpened under soft blush. Eyeshadow that made my eyes look bigger, brighter, more alive. I looked like a princess. Not a parody, an actual princess. Holy, Emily breathed. Julian, if this is a joke, it's the best one I've ever seen. Lara was quiet, but her eyes were wide. It suits you more than I expected. Eugenia stepped closer. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Just looked at me. Really looked at me. How does it feel? She asked quietly. And that was the question, wasn't it? How did it feel? I took a breath, and the corset pressed gently against my ribs. I took a step, and the heels clicked on the floor. I moved my hand, and the fabric rippled like silk water. It doesn't feel wrong, I whispered. It feels alive. Eugenia smiled. Not a smirk this time, a real smile. Good, she said, because this is just the beginning. The night of the performance arrived faster than I was ready for. I stood backstage in that pale blue gown, heart hammering in my chest, palms sweating despite the cool air. I could hear the audience filing in. Students, professors, a few family members. The low murmur of conversation, the rustle of programs, the scrape of chairs. Emily was bouncing on her toes, running through her lines as the stepsister. Lara was centering herself with deep breaths, preparing to embody the fairy godmother. Eugenia was pacing, not nervous, but focused. She'd be narrating, guiding the audience through our reimagined story. And then the lights dimmed, the curtains rose, and I stepped into the spotlight. The audience went silent. Completely, utterly silent. I could see them in the front rows, eyes wide, mouths slightly open. Some confused, some curious, some already leaning forward, captivated. The dress shimmered under the stage lights like liquid silver. Every movement I made sent ripples of light across the fabric. I felt exposed and powerful at the same time. Eugenia's voice rang out, rich and commanding, beginning the narration. Emily burst onto the stage as the mischievous stepsister, and the audience laughed. Actually laughed, at her perfectly timed sarcasm and exaggerated gestures. Lara entered as the fairy godmother, and the energy shifted. Her gentle voice, her calm presence, brought warmth and magic to the story. She moved like she was floating, and I found myself believing in her spells. And me? I danced. I twirled. I knelt and rose and glided across that stage like I'd been born to do it. With every step, I felt something loosening inside me. Something that had been tied down, held back, kept small for so many years. The dress didn't trap me. The heels didn't trip me up. The makeup didn't feel like a mask. They felt like permission. Permission to be more, to take up space, to shine. The missing shoe scene came, and the audience was chanting, actually chanting, "Cinderella! Cinderella!" as I knelt center stage, sliding my foot into that sparkling slipper. I looked up, and I saw faces in the crowd. Professors exchanging impressed looks, students leaning forward, completely absorbed. One girl in the third row had tears streaming down her face. Backstage during our quick change, Emily grabbed my arm and whispered, "Julian, you've ruined Cinderella for every other guy on campus. No one's topping this." Lara was quiet, but I caught her watching me with an expression I'd never seen before. Surprise, respect, maybe even awe. And Eugenia was watching me with this look of pride. Not surprise, pride, like she'd always imagined her idea coming to life. The final scene came, the lights rose, the music swelled, and when the curtains closed, the applause wasn't polite. It was thunderous, roaring. The kind of applause that shakes the walls and makes your chest feel too small to contain all the emotion. For them, it was just a project, just a grade, just a clever reimagining of a classic tale. For me, it was revelation. On that stage, I wasn't pretending. I wasn't playing a character. I was becoming. Backstage after the performance, we were buzzing. Emily was laughing, practically vibrating with excitement. Lara was smiling wider than I'd ever seen her smile. Eugenia was fielding compliments from professors and classmates, gracious but clearly pleased. And me? I was sitting on a costume trunk, still in the gown, makeup slightly smudged from sweat, staring at nothing. Someone handed me a bottle of water. I don't remember who. People kept coming up to me. You were incredible. I've never seen anything like that. How did you do that? I didn't know how to answer them. I didn't know how to explain that I hadn't done anything except stop fighting myself for 30 minutes. Lara sat down beside me, quiet as always. You surprised yourself tonight, didn't you? She asked softly. I nodded. Maybe you always had it in you, she said. Maybe you just needed the right moment to let it out. Before I could respond, Eugenia appeared. She shooed everyone else away with a look, then sat on my other side. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she wrapped her arm around my shoulders and pulled me close. Not romantic. Not performative, just there. Julian, she whispered, her voice fierce and gentle at the same time. You think this ends tonight? This project? This performance? This dress? I looked at her, confused. She smiled. No. This is only the beginning. And God help me, I believed her. I didn't know it then, but Eugenia's support wouldn't just change a project grade. It wouldn't just earn us accolades in a university theater class. It would change my entire life. Because that night, none of us knew it would lead to Milan, to my very first clothing label gig, and a stage bigger than I'd ever dreamed of with Eugenia standing right beside me. She'd be the one who pushed me to audition for shows I thought were out of my league. She'd be the one who held my hand through panic attacks and champagne toasts. She'd be the one who, years later, would become my wife. But that's another story, and we'll get to it. So here I am, 7 years later. No longer Julian, the quiet theater student. No longer the boy who played it safe and kept his head down. Now I'm Queen Goddess, the name that started as a joke backstage, that became a stage name, that eventually became my identity. I run a fashion brand. I perform on stages. I give talks about authenticity and transformation and the courage it takes to become yourself. And through it all, Eugenia is right there, my wife, my wildfire, the woman who saw something in me before I could see it in myself. That night in the university theater, that dusty, cramped, barely holding together space, was the night Queen Goddess was born. Not fully formed, not complete, but born. One project became the seed of identity, acceptance, love, and everything that followed. That day, I walked into rehearsal as Julian, the careful, controlled, quiet spark who was afraid of taking up too much space. But I walked out with a piece of Queen Goddess. The part of me that shimmers, the part that commands attention, the part that refuses to shrink, the name that would one day become mine. So if you've ever discovered yourself in the most unexpected way, in a moment you weren't looking for, in a place you never planned to be, wearing something you never thought you'd wear, then you understand. You understand that transformation isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's as simple as saying yes when everything in you wants to say no. Sometimes it's trying on a dress that doesn't fit who you think you are and discovering that maybe it fits exactly who you've always been. This is only the beginning of the Queen Goddess story. So hit subscribe, join the Gender Diary family, and don't miss what comes next, because the next chapter is coming. Because the night Queen Goddess was born in that dusty theater was just the prologue. The end.
The Gender Diary exists to light that path with shared stories. Whether you found connection in this narrative, you're on your own journey of gender exploration, or you're here seeking understanding, your subscription fuels our mission. Every subscriber empowers us to keep illuminating these authentic experiences for our community. Kindly drop a comment below. Your voice adds to the tapestry of experiences that makes this space meaningful. Until our next story unfolds.